And happy Survivor Girl Sunday, everybody. So glad that you are joining us here in the Strange Friends Media studio. I have a special guest today, but first I'm going to go ahead with a disclaimer of Survivor Girl Podcast is a production of Strange Friends Media Group. Myself and guests of SGP are not doctors, therapists, counselors, or trained medical professionals. We are not here to treat, diagnose, or prescribe to any means of treatment. Survivor Girl Podcast is here to share our journeys and what we've overcome in hopes of inspiring, uplifting, and empowering others. I got a couple shout outs that I want to put out there today. First off, I want to say thank you to Nails with Dawn, Rarity Nails. Thank you for keeping me in my nails perfect. Also, Just Bling and $5 Paparazzi by Sarah, because last week or the week before, she had sold special pieces that were purple in honor of Survivor Girl Podcast, and some of the proceeds are going towards a family that is in need of some help at this time. So thank you for that, Sarah. Go check her out. Check out Nails with Dawn on Facebook. They're both there. And also want to give a shout out to Serenity Cooperative out of Battle Creek. Check them out on Facebook, as well as 6 Degrees Truth Serum. Go and like their page and see what they've been up to. You can get all of the information on Serenity Cooperative on Facebook, and you can find out what they're up to and what they're doing, along with 6 Degrees Truth Serum. Having fun talking tonight, guys. Also want to give a shout out to solidstateradio.net for re-airing Survivor Girl Podcast, along with all of the other podcasts from Strange Friends Media Group. That includes Don't Make This Weird Show, This Is My Brain, Mitch's Fake Radio, and we have more coming on board. So keep on liking us on Facebook, following us, because we have a lot going on. Survivor Girl is not only on YouTube now, we're also being aired on Twitch, and you can catch us on Instagram, Pinterest, because I'm one of those kind of crafty ladies, and I like that. I like to go on those journeys. Also, you can find us on Twitter and, like I said, on Twitch, so you can go jump over there. Tonight, with our special guest, we have Tony also getting on mic with any of your comments, your questions, anything that you guys have going on out there. Go ahead and put them in on here so that he can ask the questions to my special guest, which is Travis French, and I'm super excited to have him here tonight. I'm really glad that he's here to tell us his story of recovering, thriving, and surviving.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
So glad that you're here. I know that we posted on Facebook. I kind of I put the wrong date from last time because I do a lot of the graphics and everything, and I was so excited to get it out there to advertise that you were coming on tonight, because you have a really incredible story that I missed that little minor detail, which is okay, because I was thinking about it afterward, and I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and let it be known that I am human. I make mistakes, and it is tonight. So tune in, and I hope that you guys are all tuning in. I'm excited that you guys are here. So we're going to talk about your story, and in between, I'm going to ask some questions along with Tony jumping in if we have anything in the chats.
So, awesome.
We actually do have something in
the chat,
okay.
Though.
Candy chimes in and says, "Hello, sis. Thanks for the shout out."
Oh, you're welcome. Glad you can join. She's from Truth Serum, 6 Degrees Truth Serum, and Serenity Cooperative. Like I said, go check her out on Facebook. A lot of really cool, good, feel-good stuff happening. Oh, and before I forget, I'm super excited. There will be an announcement coming up soon about Thrive to Survive Fest. You guys are going to want to check this out. A lot of really cool stuff that I've been putting together, and we'll have a date for you soon. All kinds of really good stuff happening. So please watch Survivor Girl Podcast, Facebook, and everywhere else that you can follow me on, because there's a lot of really awesome, good stuff happening. But all right, getting back. Thank you for that little segue there. I can't believe I forgot. I've been so excited this whole week about it. So I want you to go ahead and tell us who you are, and start telling about your story.
Okay. My name is Travis French. I was born and raised in Jackson, Michigan. Born to my father, who was Skip French, my mother, who was Dorothy French, and basically, I was born into a family of addiction and alcoholism. You know, my father's father was, an alcoholic, and my mother's father and mother, I believe, from what I understand, she was removed from their care at 5 years old because of, their addictions and things like that. And she was put in foster care. And so, it's generational with me, and it definitely runs in the family. It runs in the genetics that, addiction was alive and well, and is alive and well, and it runs from person to person.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, I started off with, like I said, family was both full blown alcoholics. They drank a lot. My mother drank 2 to 3 fifths of vodka a day. My dad drank a 24 pack of Budweiser a day. He would go to work all day long and then come home and basically just drink and drink and drink. And then my mother, she worked also, but I just remember her being around a lot more and drinking and just
Yeah.
vodka. She'd always walk around with a coffee cup, and she drank a lot. And so it was um, toxic situation, to say the least. I guess there was a lot of fighting. I remember a lot of fighting. I remember getting my ass whooped a lot by, my dad and mother both. But, my mother's were certain things, like not putting the toilet seat down, and then she'd fall into the toilet when the seat wasn't down.
Right. Right.
And then I'd catch a whooping for that. But my dad, especially, I just remember him like really just beating the shit out of me. That's what I can remember from a young age, anyways. I was, if I didn't do what he wanted, like certain things, like get up and get his beer or things like that, then it was a problem. So, yeah.
So you dealt with that a lot,
hmm
and probably did you get to that point where you were like hiding out because you were afraid of anything that you would do would
hmm
just land you in
Yep,
trouble?
and I'd end up in my bedroom. Yep, I'd go to my bedroom. Music has always been an escape for me
Yeah.
from a young age. I'd turn on my radio and I'd listen to music and try to drown out the fighting and things that were going on around me.
Hmm.
That's why I say music's been a huge part of my life and still is. I love music. Yeah, so I guess just skipping ahead till at 6 years old, I was molested, raped, however you want to call it, by another man. Um, and I felt like at 6 years old, my innocence was taken from me.
Oh, for
That's the
sure.
way, like, how I describe it to people.
Yeah.
He, it was me and my cousin, and my mom and my mom and her mom were best friends or aunts, or okay. I guess it wasn't really family, but they
Right.
they would go out together at night, and he would babysit us. And I don't remember a lot of it. She was older than I was, and she was actually the one that reported it.
Oh, okay.
But I just remember him laying us on the bed and touching us and things like that. And
Something that no 6-year-old should ever have to
mm,
deal with.
yeah,
And you have that, happening at such a young age. I can imagine not only going from seeing the alcoholism and getting abused that way and then having that happen. You probably were afraid to talk about it because you would probably land yourself in trouble again, I
yeah.
would assume.
Things that weren't supposed to. There was just certain things you didn't talk about, especially when you took it to school or things like that. There are
Yeah.
just certain people that you could, I was taught not to talk around. You just don't mention these things. These are things that stay in the home. And
Mhm.
I remember my dad taking me to counseling and things like that, and I always had to show on the doll like where I was touched and what happened to me and things like that. But for just, it was a lot of chaos. That was something in my life that I didn't realize at the time how much it had changed me until I gotten older, and
Yeah.
how
It affects.
the effects of it didn't start really happening until I became an adult, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay. So, like, was part of it? I know they say when you're younger and something traumatic like that happens that you just kind of block it out. Was that something that
Yeah,
you dealt with?
there's a lot of things that I don't remember, and I can literally be driving down the road, and I'll have a flashback and just remember something random. And
Oh, wow.
that was part of like me putting drugs on top of things, was just to kind of drown it out.
Right.
And back then, obviously, I didn't have the drugs, but even then, my parents would let me sip their beers, and they thought that was funny. So maybe I was catching a
Starting.
buzz at a young age. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, almost likely. Yeah. Being that little and trying to taste the beer and every different thing.
Yep.
I remember being a kid and just thinking that was funny too.
Yeah.
And yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So dealing with not only the trauma and stuff going on at home, you had to deal with this and probably feared every time they went out
Mm-hmm.
of being put in this person's care.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get a chance to get closure with that part of it?
I mean, yeah, I've done a lot of therapy and a lot of different, yeah, a lot of therapy mostly, but that was the therapy I think is what really got closure with the situation because I talked a lot about it a lot, but yeah, I never like I know the guy ended up going to prison and stuff like that, but I don't know a whole lot
Don't know
about the
much.
situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So,
was really young,
yeah. How old were you when you started going to therapy?
7.
7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, they got me into therapy immediately,
Oh
and
wow.
like I had to start going. I've been basically in therapy my entire life,
Yeah.
basically up until this day. I literally just graduated out of like mental health and therapy and things like that a month and a half ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Well, congratulations on that. I know
thank you.
it's a long road. We don't realize I think sometimes growing up how when you're a kid how much that stuff affects you and
Mm-hmm.
like I was saying, we push stuff down, we find different things, and I think with me through different things in childhood, mine was the food addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So pushing it down with all the different things with food was kind of where I went with it.
Yep.
But things will come up now too as I get older and go, oh wow, okay, that makes more sense
Mm-hmm.
now. But I've talked about that too on other shows about going to therapy. Like I'm pretty transparent about it because I want other people that watch the show to understand that it's not a bad word.
It
Therapy's not a bad
Nope,
word.
absolutely not. And that's why I'm very open. I'm an open book as far as anything that anybody ever wants to know about me. And when I share my story, I try to be as transparent as possible about everything that
Mm.
I can remember. And because like I said, I did a lot of drug abuse over the years to try and block out all the memories of things that happened.
Well, speaking of that encouragement, we have another comment in the chat here
Awesome.
from Stone Cottage Farms. Uh, can't listen long, but just wanted to stop in and quick and show some love. Heather, thank you for being so awesome and continuing to encourage your fellow thriving survivors. Hugs from
Mm,
Farmer Chrissy.
She's gonna make me cry.
that's
I want to
awesome.
give another shout out to Stone Cottage Farms. Absolutely love you guys. Very big support in my life, I feel, and with this show, with everything else that I'm kind of doing. So I just really, really want to give a shout out to her. Plus, she was my driver when I had to go get my dental work done. So I'm giving the hearts because she tricked me with filters to make me feel better. So I was okay with going into the dentist, but shout out to you guys. Love you guys. Check them out on Etsy and on Facebook. It's Stone Cottage Farm out of Mayville, guys. So thank you for tuning in and chiming in, guys.
Hashtag illegal cheese for life.
Yeah, there you
There you
go.
go.
Thank you, Tony. So, but yeah, with the therapy thing, I think it's important that just because we're in therapy that we talk about it so other people feel comfortable.
Absolutely,
You
being
know.
able to reach out and
Mhm.
ask for help and get the help that they need because I'm a huge advocate for therapy.
Mhm.
Even though in the career that I've picked up and that I do now in my life, I still I still needed therapy and I still do. I still everybody needs someone to talk to.
Mhm.
We need people.
And I think it's that honesty that you have to have with yourself. Because I remember the first time going in for therapy, it was kind of like my mom talked about it. And I had mentioned something about it, but back in my mind, I was just like, oh, this is not going to help me. Like, this is
Hmm.
not. So it really is a lot on your part, too, to have that mindset that you're going there to get help.
Yep.
And you have to understand that instead of saying it's not going to work because
Yeah.
then it won't.
And closing people off and not
Mhm.
giving them a chance. Been a lot of times once I got older that I realized that I would shut people out based on how they like if they didn't have life experience like me.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if they just had their little piece of paper on the wall, then I was very judgmental about how they could or couldn't help me. And
I
now today,
understand.
today as far as today, I keep my mind. I have a very open mind, and I am open to the fact that it doesn't matter what background we come from. We all have life experience, and everybody can learn something from someone else.
And I think that's important. I think that's a big part of Survivor Girl and why this podcast means so much is to be able to not just talk about the journeys and the things that I've been through, but like to bring guests on such as yourself to be able to tell these different stories and these different parts of life
Hmm.
that I might not have experience with, but because you have and you're willing to share your story, other people that are listening are out there to be able to go like, "Oh, I
Yep.
resonate with that. I
Hmm.
understand that.
Yep, they can identify with it,
Yeah, and I
and then
think that's
hopefully
so
get through
important.
it. That's why I'm so transparent with my
Yeah,
story, because I want people to be able to see that you can go through all this trauma and all these different things happening to you in your life, and then me causing my own problems and trauma throughout my life, and then still being able to overcome, you know, and thrive and become a productive member of society, as they say.
yeah, and it really starts with finding where you need to dig.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, starting with therapy for you and I, that
Yep.
was something that was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes work. It takes work to get there because there's more stuff that happens because life is so unpredictable
Yes.
and so much stuff can get thrown at us and it's interesting to see how people react in different ways to these things because there might be two of us that are going through the same thing, but someone might be self-medicating or the other person might be going to therapy and having a positive attitude and you're
Mm-hmm.
going, how do you have this positive attitude when that is like a shit hand that you got dealt?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really.
That's what everybody. That's what people always say, that they commend me, and they're like, oh, we really appreciate you sharing your story, because I've been through a lot and gotten through it. Um, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say necessarily through it. I still struggle daily with certain things and aspects of my life. Food is a big one. That was something I had to identify, that I was eating my feelings away, and I go get a whole large pizza and come home and eat the whole thing by myself, and then feel sick to my stomach and go to sleep or throw up, and just I've struggled with food a lot,
Oh,
and eating my feelings away. But my main vice was drugs.
Yeah.
So I guess at 11, at 11 years old, my mom and dad got divorced,
Okay.
and that was very traumatic for me. Just in that aspect, I remember my dad leaving and moving in with his girlfriend, and I believe it was in Battle Creek at the time. And then my mom had moved out and moved in with her boyfriend, and I was left alone at 11 years old.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember sitting in the house at night, and I'd have to go around and I'd turn on all the lights in the house, and I'd turn on the TV, and I remember curling up on the couch at 11 years old and crying myself to sleep and wondering what I had done wrong for my parents to leave me.
Oh, wow.
So, I internalized that as a kid, and I thought at the time, because I remember being a bad little kid, like, and acting out in a lot of different ways, and going to like the grocery store, and my mom and dad would be beating my ass on the way out because I was out of control.
Yeah.
So,
But you're a kid.
yeah, I was just a kid, but yeah, so I internalized that though, and I took that as like, okay, maybe that's why they left me, was because I was such a bad kid.
Right.
And then I basically got introduced. Okay, I went over to my neighbor's house, and she was using marijuana.
Okay.
She was smoking a joint, and I was like, hey, let me try that. And I remember taking a couple hits off of it, and I was sitting there, and I sat down on the chair, and I looked around, and I remember having this feeling in my body, and I said to myself, this is it. And
At 11?
Yep, at 11 years old, I was
Wow.
smoking marijuana,
Okay.
and I remember thinking to myself, this is it. This is, I didn't feel all the pain and all the things, and didn't have to cry myself to sleep at night anymore when I smoked marijuana. I could just, comatose myself and go to bed and get by. And
Right.
so then basically from there, it was, like I said, at 11, it was just the marijuana. And then by the time I was 13, I had bumped it right up to, because I realized that helped. So a bunch of other stuff would probably help too. So let's get some other substances in there. Now, of course, at that time, I had internalized that alcohol was bad because my parents were alcoholics. And
You're
that's,
right.
so I was thinking, no, alcohol is bad, but drugs are okay.
Yeah.
So by 13, I was taking LSD and snorting cocaine and just going crazy on anything that I could. I would get marijuana, and
Were you
you
going
know,
to school at all at this
yep,
time too?
I was. That's another thing I did. Yes, I got on the bus. I'd get up every morning. I attended school every day. There was no truancy. There was never. See, that was. I don't know if that was something, I can't identify it, but that was something ingrained in me, that like, you better go to school and get up. But I'd get up and I'd get on the bus and I'd go to school every single day, and I put on this really good front that everything was okay. And by the time that I was a teenager, it was actually fun. Everybody would come to my house, and it was the cool place to hang
Right.
out. And
So who's checking in on you at this time? Like,
my mom
your mom
would
was checking
call
in.
every couple weeks.
How are you? Was she bringing food and stuff, or like
She
how was
would
that?
yeah, she would come in. From what I can remember, she would come in, and it'd usually be about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be asleep. It'd be right before I'd go to school. I remember it'd be weekdays, and she would come in and just like set some groceries on the counter and put some groceries in the fridge or whatever, and she'd always leave these notes. That's why I have a thing with notes.
Yeah.
But she would leave these notes, and she would highlight things and she would underline things and basically bitching about how the house was dirty and this was that, and yeah, and I needed
Yeah.
to clean the house and I needed to do this and I needed to not have my friends there. And so yeah, I grew this like hate for notes, and it got to the point where I'd wake up in the morning and I'd come downstairs and see a freaking note and I'd just rip it off the table, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this shit? Who is she to come over here? You know, by the time I was probably 14 or 15,
Yeah.
and my friends are living with me at this time, I'm like, who is she to come in here and tell me what to do?
Right.
You know what I mean? There
Right.
ain't no one even around here. I do what I want. So
Yep. So you're on the fast track
yeah.
with all of this at such a young age,
Mm.
and it just keeps on rolling.
It perpetuates. It gets worse and worse and worse. Just yep, the drug use always picked up throughout the years. By the time I was 15, I had two friends living with me. Their parents had kicked them out, and that my house was the place to be. It
Yeah.
was somewhere that we could all come together, and so all my neighborhood friends would be there, and then the two guys that I had living with me, and they were my family. That's why I shared that. My friends were my family,
Yeah.
my brothers, and we all grew up together, and we when we fight, we'd put on the boxing gloves when we had bad, and that's just what we did. And we'd wrestle and tear shit up, and just we were guys just
Right.
having a good time. We were
Right.
15, 16-year-old kids just doing what we did, and we did drugs out of control, and we drank. Of course, by that time I was drinking. I didn't feel like it was a problem,
Right.
but I would mix the alcohol in with all the cocaine and LSD and mushrooms and anything basically we could get our hands on. I think I've pretty much tried every single drug there is out there, I feel
Yeah.
like. And because we had to see what it felt like.
Was it hard to get a hold of this stuff?
No.
No.
No, not necessarily. Yeah. I was always that guy that, if you needed something, I could accommodate
Find it.
those. Yeah. Accommodate those needs, I guess you could say. And I just always had, like I said, with the marijuana, I would get quite a bit of it at a time. So we always had the weed around. I always had to have that on deck regardless.
So now, because you went through this as a kid growing up, and then you were actively using and stuff, I know probably a lot of questions for parents that are listening right now would be, what would they look for if their kids, with their kids? Because I'm sure there's a lot of parents that are just going either way. They're thinking that their kid is, and their kid really isn't, or
Mhm. I would just suggest to get involved in their lives, and open communication is a huge one with
Yeah.
especially with my son. I'm working on that right now, but open communication with them, and getting not feeling like you can't get into their phones, or not want to go through their rooms, or feel like, oh, I'm invading their privacy or something like that. Yeah, in certain ways you may be, but ultimately, if you have a concern and you feel like your child is using drugs, and ultimately you could be saving their life.
Mhm.
So
So you can save the whole my kid's my best friend act,
Yeah.
and really just be brutal with it.
mhm.
Because once they start getting down that road, me and you had discussed, and I've talked about it on here before. My boyfriend about 3 years ago had passed away from a heroin overdose.
Yes.
And with him, the way that it started is somebody had cracked his back. Well, he was a big guy.
hmm
Even growing up, like when he was a teenager, he was about 6'4", I think.
hmm
And somebody lifted him to crack his back, and then after that, he started getting pain pills.
Yep.
And then after pain pills, then it just kind of started, So you really got to be vigilant on all aspects. I think
Mhm.
when it comes to drugs, prescriptions, it doesn't matter. Like when you have kids, you really have to.
I was talking to my children's mother the other day, and that's what she said. She's like, throughout, 'cause she was around from after, I believe I was 16 or 17 when me and her met. And she was like, with all the other drugs that you did, you always seemed to be able to maintain. And it wasn't until I got in my car accident, I broke my neck in two places, broke my back, I had a closed head injury, and I had a halo on for 7 months, that I got introduced to opiates. And when I got introduced to opiates, it was Oxycontin and morphine. They were giving me 120 Oxycontins and giving me 60 morphines a month. So I was getting morphine and Oxycontin combined, getting a whole almost 300, 200 some pills a month, and they were giving me all this Xanax and all this other stuff on top of that too. But so I was getting almost 300 pills a month, and I was taking all these combinations of pills, and I had no clue at the time because I'd never been introduced to opiates. So
Right.
I didn't know anything about it other than hey, it makes me feel better, helps with my pain. And so I just kept taking it. And they were telling me about the Oxycontin and their disclaimer when it came out about how it was less addictive and this and that. And
Yeah, maybe to someone that doesn't come from a family that already has addiction. And I'm
Mhm.
not pointing a finger there, but that's the truth.
Yeah,
You know, if you've
absolutely.
already got an addictive personality and then something like that happens to you, man, you're even speeding further down that.
Yep. Yep. So I
hill.
basically they were giving me all these pills, and I went in after 7 months of having this halo on. They took it off of my head, and they were like, "Hey, seek a primary care physician. We're not writing you another prescription." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, just have a great day, basically." And so and
Uh,
so I left the hospital, that day.
yeah,
That's how it works. It's sad, but that's how it is. They
That's
basically will just
crazy.
to cut you off, and
yeah.
I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't have any concept of what being sick was or anything like
Mhm.
that. So I started to get sick. Ultimately, is what happened.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "What's going on?" And one of my buddies had already been, introduced to heroin and knew what it was and things like that. And he was like, "You're sick, bro. You're doing opiates, and your body is physically, chemically dependent on that chemical. You need that in your body to function." And I'm like, "What?" So he basically he introduced me to it, and I remember getting a few packs from him and just sniffing it at first and
Mhm.
trying that, and then I knew some other people that were a little deeper into it that were using it IV,
Yeah.
using IV heroin. Basically, after that, I bought a few Oxycontins here and there on the street, but that was way too expensive, and
Mhm.
I knew someone that had heroin, so that was and that worked amazing. That was like 10 times better I felt than even the Oxycontins and stuff. So I was like, yes, that's when I got introduced to heroin. That was a whole nother love, and when I say love, I mean that was an affair with me. It
That's
didn't.
one of the harder
Nothing else
ones.
mattered,
Yeah.
and I literally felt like I was in love. And
S-
then, like that
What's
feeling at 11 is how I attribute it to. That
okay?
feeling that I got at 11 years old with marijuana was the exact same feeling that the heroin gave me.
Like re-kicked it,
Mm-hmm.
kick-started it again
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Yep.
So what's the difference between snorting and then using it? I mean, other than obviously, what's the difference in how it affects you?
It's
Is it
immediate.
different?
Yeah, I always used to say direct connect.
Okay.
That's what I would always attribute to that. I was, sniffing it would be if I was dope sick and I sniffed it, I would be a couple of minutes. It'd be 5-10 minutes before the effects would kick in and I would stop feeling sick. With the IV use, it was immediate. It was direct and to the point and 0 to 100 real quick. And that's what I was always going for is super, super fast and feeling better right now. And I want to stop throwing up and shitting on myself. And this is what I'm going to do to do
Yeah.
it. And once I got introduced to the needle, that was a whole nother. It didn't take long. It was, I was sniffing it, and sniffing heroin was working, but I know someone that was further along in it, and he was using an IV, and so I called him up on the phone one day, and I was like, "Hey, how do I do this?" Basically, I got a needle and got me some dope, and I was like, "How do I do this?" And he basically told me on the phone, over the phone, how to do it, and I did it, and he's like, "All right, you're gonna see the blood come in," and I did all that, and that was the first time I ever injected it, and I fell off the toilet. Literally, I was sitting in my bathroom, I fell off the toilet, and I laid on the floor for hours probably, and then when I woke up, I was just like, "Yep, that's it. There it is, right there."
And then
And it was,
you can't get anything else like that from what I understand.
oh God, no.
Nothing like
There's
that.
there's no feeling that compares to it. It's it's intense to say the least.
But and it's so much different. From what I understand now, as that's one thing too. One of the big questions that I've always had, or that Zach would have when we were together and he was in
Mhm.
recovery, what they asked if I was somebody that has used, and I never have.
Yep.
So for me, I didn't understand how the addiction and how that is like a constant. From what
Mm.
I understand,
Mhm.
like he just had a hard time
Mhm.
even being away from it for so long.
Yeah, and even like when I got dope sick, I would always say that was, if to me it felt like in my mind life or death. I had to get my next fix. There was no no, you don't get another one, you just stay sick. It was whatever I had to do to get my next fix, and so it was intense.
And
And
it's scarier now, it seems.
yeah, nowadays it isn't heroin, it's fentanyl. That's pretty much what everybody's doing now, and everybody's killing themselves. And so basically, I went through a few years, 5 or 6 years of IV, use. I got with a woman who we were together for almost 4 years, and we were using IV. She ended up, her blood went septic, and she ended up getting endocarditis, which is an infection in her heart valves from using IV drugs. And she had to have open heart surgery at 32 years old. And but she kept coming back to me, and at the time I wasn't ready to quit using. So basically I left her alone because I felt like I was saving her life. That's what I was trying to do, was let her have a life.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to quit using, so it wasn't an option for me to stop. So I left her, and I got with my girlfriend at the time. Then she turned into my fiance after a couple of years. Basically, long story short, okay, I was living with her. It was a toxic relationship. By that time, I'd picked up IV meth also, and so it was kind of insane. But we fought a lot. Things happened, and it was just, like I said, a very toxic situation. So again, I left that situation alone. I just made the choice that I was going to leave Jackson and move to Bay City and try and change my life, get my life, turned around. I messaged her. It was August 28th, 2016. And we always said to each other, bye for now. And she would always say, but never forever to me. And I said bye for now to her. And at 2:38 in the afternoon, she messaged me back and said, but never forever. And then at 5:32 that day, she was dead.
Oh my gosh.
So life can literally change in the blink of an eye. And my whole life did change in the blink of an eye at that moment.
I can understand that. I can understand that one and resonate with you on that. Because when it happened with Zach, he dropped me off to work, and it was Black Friday, and I said, just drop me off. It's going to be crazy. I know the parking lot. So he did. And at this time, he was like 3.5 years clean from it. Somebody had contacted him, and he was never late, always answered the phone. And one of the things that still kind of haunts me today is at one point he had messaged me and asked me about his belt, and I had no idea. So that kind of kicks my butt still sometimes, because I didn't understand, and there was Narcan in the house, but I was afraid because it was the needle, it wasn't for the nose, and I was afraid if it was sitting out that he would be tempted.
It'd be a trigger to him, possibly, absolutely.
So we made that precaution to put it away. And somebody that he used to get in contact with got a hold of him, added him that day. He had my car, and he went and did all the stuff he said he was going to do. Went and seen his parents, got a hold of him, and it was such a lethal dose of the fentanyl that he never showed up to pick me up for work. And before I had walked in, he knocked on the window and he did one of these numbers, and that's the last thing I seen of him. Which I hold that, but man, I feel you.
Yeah,
just like that.
It's some heavy stuff for real. I think the hardest part of it that really got me to change was the fact that I had to bury her with her children. Seeing the effects that it had on her children is what really made me want to change, and not wanted to have my children have to go through the same thing.
Right.
So I ended up using for another 2 months. After that, I stayed in Jackson, and it was about 9 months after that. After that happened, I was living under a bridge, and I was content with that as long as I had my next one. And I would go out. I would spend days where I would go out to I'd go out to her gravesite and spend a lot of time out there, and basically just talk to her and see what I could. I don't know. I just spent a lot of time talking to her. It was a heavy situation. Still is. It still affects me to this day.
I imagine.
The one that I had mentioned to you about that ended up having open heart surgery, she ended up passing away too. This was about, and then she, had gone back out. I guess from what I understand, they were said that they thought she was using again, and I talked to her about 2 weeks before, and then just like, in the blink of an eye, life can change. That's why I tell people to love your people close to you, love everybody, but love the people that are closest to you, and hug them and tell them that you love them today, because you never know when things can change.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in any situation, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be to that effect, but it can be, because it's such a thing now, such an epidemic. So many people are using, but now, like you said, it's not heroin anymore. It's more fentanyl, and
fentanyl,
people are going long term without using,
Mhm.
even weeks. And then when they do that, it's like an instant.
Yeah, I have a. There's someone. I'm a part of a 12-step program.
Mhm.
That's part of what saved my life today. And I have someone that was in the program. From he basically came to a meeting. He had almost 4.5, maybe 5 years clean, from what I understand. Came to a meeting and he shared that everything was good in his life. They did some step writing and things like that. From what I gather, I wasn't at the actual meeting, but from what people told me, and then he went home and overdosed that night and passed away.
It's
And,
just that monkey,
mhm.
the monkey on the back. And that's what they
And
say.
it is a constant. It is work for me every single day.
Yeah.
It's not something that I can ever put down or stop doing. It's something that I do every single day. I have to do something for my recovery every day, and I have to find things to be grateful for and find the silver lining in every situation, good or bad. I take the good and the bad with equal amounts of enthusiasm today, because life's going to happen. Obviously, it comes and it goes, things happen, but I just try to be as positive as possible. And
So with moving here to Bay City, is it something that you recommend to people, is to completely take yourself out of the equation where you're at? Change your number, change.
that it depends, but yeah, for the most part, certain people can do that. Some people have to leave their area. For me, I had to leave Jackson. It was a very toxic situation for me. I knew every single person there, and it felt like almost, and I knew everybody that used, anybody in the drug world, I knew who they were, and they knew me.
Yeah.
And so for me, and then I remember right before I left Jackson, someone said to me, you got these two phones, and that's your problem right there, is those phones, because that's what keeps you connected to everybody. So before I left Jackson the last time, my mom brought me back up to, she got me admitted to the psych ward. But right before she did that, we went downtown and I threw my phones in the river, because I knew that ultimately I was going to leave Jackson, and then I needed to get rid of those phones, because they had no use for me anymore. It didn't serve any purpose of what I was trying to do with my life. I stayed in the psych ward. My mom got me admitted. She did the 72-hour hold on me. At that time, I'd probably been awake for 2 weeks, and I called her, and I was in my normal blah, 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 talking a million miles an hour, and just going like talking about absolutely insane things. And she's just, so she got me admitted into the psych ward. I stayed in there for 10 days, and then they said, hey, would you willing to go to treatment? At that time, I had already been to treatment 18 other times, inpatient.
Wow. Yeah.
And the equation there, and the things that I didn't do, was every time that I would go to treatment, I learned a lot of stuff. But as I was leaving, they would always tell me, go to a meeting and find a sponsor, and all these things that they would suggest to me as I was leaving treatment. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. And I never did it. I never gave it a chance. So they sent me up to Saginaw. I did treatment in Saginaw for 90 days. And while I was in that treatment, they said to me, well, hey, we have this men's recovery house that you can go to and stay to for free for up to a year.
Oh, wow.
And, get your life back together and build some kind of foundation. And that's, I took advantage of that. And I was thinking, okay, you know what you do when you go back to Jackson. Left up to your own devices, you go back there. Made really good promises to my children and things. All these different times in treatment. I've been incarcerated also 23 times. I'm a multiple convicted felon. I have an extensive criminal history.
And that happens a lot
Mhm.
with people that are actively using and whatnot. And I think that's a big thing with the whole hope not handcuffs thing now.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm an angel.
You're one of the
I'm an
angels.
angel through hope not handcuffs. That's
Can you
something
explain
that
that to the listeners, what that
yes,
means?
basically what it is just like for me personally, they'll contact me. I'm not really that involved
Mhm.
anymore, but they'll contact me. I'll go down to the police station. They'll have someone that'll come in there, and basically if they don't have like a warrant for murder for their arrest or anything like that, or any kind of real serious warrants, people can walk into the police station. Even if you have drugs on you, you can give the police your drugs and say, hey, I need help, and I need to get into treatment. I'm sick of being a drug addict, and I need help. And basically, it doesn't matter if you have warrants for your arrest, anything. They will not arrest you. They'll contact someone like me, who's an angel in the area, and I'll come down there, take them some food and water and different, socks and just a little care package, and basically get them enrolled into treatment somewhere. And then once I get them enrolled in treatment, I contact someone else. They'll come pick them up and transport them there, and we make sure that they get there, and everybody's in contact about how, okay, they made it there, they're safe, everything's good. And
See, Awesome.
It's a really good program.
Yeah, now with you going through the different stuff that you've gone through, and I think this is really important here, is the fact that you have been through so many different things.
Hmm.
You are in recovery yourself, still working the process
Yep.
every single day, but yet to continue to keep you moving forward, you're helping other people too.
Absolutely.
And without you still being here and making it this far, those people wouldn't get that help.
Hmm.
So that's incredible.
Yep, that's my passion. That's part of that's what I love to do today. I had a job at a restaurant for a short amount of time, about a year, my first year in recovery, and it was a little hectic, but I got through it. But I wasn't doing what I loved, and so ultimately I was unhappy and I was stressed out all the time. And my anger was coming out, and I always told them at the job that working on getting my recovery coach license, and when I hit my 2 years, I'm going to be moving on to my career and what I really love to do, which is helping people and seeing them grow. And so basically, I got out of that at about 2 years, 3 months, and I moved on to what I do now, which is a recovery coach. I work for Saginaw Psychological and Saginaw, and I basically share my story with people, and I help these guys develop skills for them to become productive members of society. Because up until 34 years old, I was anything but. I was the convicted felon. I was the multiple times in jail. I built this street reputation that didn't ultimately mean a thing, but in my mind, it was the best thing ever.
Right.
And I had, I caught a drug charge in 2009 that was pretty serious. I have a problem like minimizing things and not pretending, that it wasn't as serious as it was, but it was a pretty big deal.
Right.
And that like ultimately put a target on my back for a long time with people thinking that I was a drug dealer. And I did sell drugs, but ultimately I was a drug addict and I had a huge problem. And to support my problem, that's what I did to support myself. And yeah,
A lot of
so
those things.
mhm.
I remember Zach talking to me about going and being a driver, and that's how he would get his,
Mhm.
just driving
Mhm.
people.
Yep, I spent a lot of time down in Detroit, obviously, because drugs were cheaper there, way cheaper. I could get my stuff for a lot cheaper than I was even paying for it in Jackson, and so I spent a lot of time down there. I would do things, yes, in order to get
Right.
run stuff around the city for them, and ultimately get paid for it. And yep, I did a lot of shitty things, a lot of things and I share this with people that I'm not a bad person. I just made bad choices.
Which happens. I mean, life is definitely about making choices.
Hmm.
It's just about now that you are doing what you're doing is going, okay, I'm making better choices for
Hmm.
myself
Hmm.
now.
Yep, I mean that's what I'm really good at. Messing stuff up and throwing things in the works and creating my own problems in my life as far as like self-sabotage. So now I'm very vigilant of it and I focus on just I have to be vigilant of my choices and my thinking. My thinking is a big one. My thinking will get to going. If I get into some negative stuff before I know it, I'm I'm like spitting it out of my mouth, and then thoughts
Burning it
become
down again.
actions. Yes, exactly. And
Now, I know that you mentioned your mom putting you or helping you or putting you into the care there for the 72 hours.
Yep.
So, with her not being a huge part as your childhood, now are you guys
yes,
closer?
she has 16 years in recovery.
Oh, wow.
And during the whole time that I was in my IV use, she was my rock, and she was who I called, and who never gave up. She would never enabled me, never gave me money, but she would always bring me food and things like that. Because I'd get out on these adventures where I'd get twacked out off speed, and I just decide to start walking with no socks and shoes on, and just I'd end up 10 miles away from my house before I know it, because I'd be talking on the phone while I was doing it. And so she'd come pick me up and she'd listen to me, and she'd bring me food because I wasn't eating. She used to tell me, you need to start drinking more water. And I'd be like, well, I'm getting 50 cc's of water at a time when I inject it in my veins. So I'm getting
Oh.
plenty. That was my sick
Right.
thinking
Right.
at the time. But
Right.
I'm like, I'm getting plenty of water, Ma. What are you talking about? And she never gave up on me. So ultimately, she made a living amends to me, and she'll share that to this day. That if she felt like if she ever gave up on me, she knows I would have died. I used to walk around and tell people, I will be that statistic. I will be found dead with a needle in my arm in a bathroom, and I was okay with that. It was my fate. I
That
felt like
you were
and,
accepting of that at that time.
mhm.
But now it's
Yep.
changed around. And you
s-
guys are
so
close?
just to share, yes, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, we are
Oh,
very
that's
close.
okay.
I just no, that's we'll get it. We'll stay with the mom. She's my rock. I still call her for everything. Everything that I need is she looks out for me.
Yeah.
My mom's amazing. She's been a huge part of my life and still is, and it's a great feeling to be able to, make her proud and to know that she never has to worry about getting that phone call of hearing that her son passed away in a bathroom with a
Yeah.
needle in her arm.
Yeah, that's a so that makes me think of, how Zach was found, and because he wasn't answering, that wasn't like him. I mean, if that man was in the shower, he would pick up the phone if I was calling. I
Mhm.
mean, that was just that
Mhm.
was how it was. And so the only thing I could think of was to call his parents, because they didn't give him money, but they did help him in the house and with food and stuff. He
Mhm.
wasn't ever on the street or not taken care of that way. But they were the ones that ultimately did find him that day, and now they are huge advocates to help other people. That's what they do.
That's yeah. That's what
That's
I
what they
that's what
do.
I do too. I've turned it around. I've turned my trauma and my pain and everything that I've been through, all the life experience and different things that I've been through, I've turned around and am able to use those things today as, stepping stones in order to show people that I've been through all these different things in life and been through a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff that happened to me as a kid and things that I ultimately put myself through as an adult, and I can turn it all around and use that to help you help yourself.
Mhm.
As long as you're willing
That's
to help
incredible.
yourself, I'm willing to help you.
That's so
And even
cool.
if not, I'll jump out there for the next human being.
It
Just
puts you in such a different positive space in your life, and I think that's another huge part. I mean, you talk about the 12-step program, and how it is important to be able to do those steps for other people that are going through what you've
hmm
gone through.
hmm
So if somebody that's listening right now that is back where you used to be,
hmm
what would be the biggest thing that you could give to them or tell them?
I guess the first thing would just be to reach out and ask for help. That's the first step. Ask someone for help. Get out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and even if you, it's hard. I can relate with not being able to ask for help because I wasn't able to help myself. God was ultimately doing for
Yeah.
me what I couldn't do for myself when I got locked up all those times and different things like that. It ultimately saved my life, and I didn't see it as that at the time, but that's what it was.
Yeah, and I know that's a huge thing for a lot of people, is they with the programs. I think a lot of time they do put religion in there for a good reason, because
Mhm.
it does really help with structuring people being able to get into recovery. Now, my other question is, with recovery, I hear a lot of different things with it, being that you always are an addict. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Or what is your stance on that?
I'm very open minded
Yeah.
to every aspect of recovery, and that does if it's church based, if it's 12-step based, if it's you were able to get away, and it's whatever works for you ultimately that keeps you clean and keeps you from not using drugs and putting chemicals in your body.
Right.
um whatever works for you, I'm open to that. For me personally, I needed the 12-step program and I needed that structure and to get involved, because like the first time that I was ever given a key to a church, I was thinking to myself, like, do you guys know who I am or where I came from? And you were not going to give me a key to this church because I'll rob this bitch blind.
Right. Right.
Seriously. And
Right. Yeah.
that's where my thinking was. But first time these people put that trust in me and gave me a chance to really thrive and be a better person, it was cool. And from there on, I just ran with service work, and now I do. That's basically my entire life is based around service work. I mean, I
Yeah.
go to the soup kitchens, that I've ultimately lived at one time,
Yeah.
and give back to them. I feed, the people, and I go to the animal shelters because I love animals.
Yeah.
So I go to the animal shelters, clean out the cat cages, do things like that. Just a lot of service work. And now in my field of recovery coaching, I'm as involved as I can be, and I really try to help everybody that I can and show them that life is possible after trauma and drugs and things like that. A
You
whole
can
life
really
of yep.
you
Because
can
up
really
until
turn yourself.
34, yeah, up until 34 years old, that's all I knew was chaos and drugs. And
Yeah. So I mean, and that's this testimony right here is just, it's incredible, because I know a lot of people who are trying to get into recovery, trying to make the right decisions, and then you have the monkey on your back that continues to keep on trying to drag you back in. People that used to sell to you, or that used to get in contact
Mm-hmm.
constantly. There's always something.
Yep, and it still happens with me. I still had one contact, I guess, it was probably 8 or 9 months ago. He reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, I'm getting lots of money, and we'd really like you back around," type of thing. And he ultimately ended up dying in the streets, type thing. He got stabbed, and it shows me that that's all that comes with that life is death and destruction and chaos, and there's nothing there for me anymore. The life that I live today is beyond my wildest dreams. I've been clean for 2 years and 7 months, and in that amount of time I've attained goals, and I just have so many good things going for me. I have an amazing career. I don't just say a job, but a career today.
Yeah.
And I'm working towards goals. And next month, I'm going to go get my CPRC, which is Certified Peer Recovery Coach through the state of Michigan, DHHS. And once I get that, then I can go anywhere in the United States with that. But
Wow.
and then just from there, I'm going to go back to school, and I'd eventually like to get my master's degree in social work and possibly be a social worker. I love to work with kids. I did a little bit of Big Brothers Big Sisters work for
Yeah.
a while, but ultimately that all kind of got put to the wayside when I had to start working and paying my own bills
Right.
and becoming a productive member of society.
Yeah, the 9 to 5 part of
Yep.
it. Yep, for sure. But it's incredible because now, since asking you to be on the show, you and I are now Facebook friends, and I see
Yes.
all of these positive, awesome messages. I see that you are killing it in the gym. And I
Yes.
know that
Yes.
that's one thing that a lot of people talk about is when in recovery, you replace things with more positive,
Mm-hmm.
more, something that you can still
Yep.
have an addiction to working out and all
Yeah.
that stuff, but it's more of like a positive because you're moving into that direction now.
It's just like my work rate as of right now is kind of how my addiction is switched over. I'm up to like 65, 70 hours a week, but
Yeah.
I still do the gym twice a day. I always told my nutritionist that when the pain becomes great enough, I'll change, and I use that in every aspect of my
Mhm.
life because I was eating food and eating my feelings away for the longest time. And once I told her, here pretty soon, I'm going to crack down and we're going to get on top of this. And now that I finally started doing it in the last year and 3 months, I've lost 90 or 107 pounds. And
Wow.
yeah,
It's
I
incredible.
have a drive right now to really just, I'm focused right now, and I have a drive to just exceed and excel and go forward in life. And
It's cool.
I don't know what could stop it. Ultimately, I was talking to my therapist right before we closed my last session with her, and she said, "Do you feel like you're always like waiting for the other shoe to drop?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "Well, can't nobody mess this up but you now? It's all in your hands." And I
Whew.
was like, "Boom, mind blown."
Yeah, I just got some chills from that because that's so real.
Mm-hmm.
That's so real. You got something in chat?
Yeah, Candy just chimed in and said, "Thank you for sharing your journey. Big hugs to you and congratulations on all your success and moving forward."
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate that. That's I love the positive feedback from people. And if you ever see me on Facebook, my Facebook's public. I put it out there. I love to give positivity. I take a lot of pictures of roses. I like to grow roses and things like that. In the summertime, you see lots of pictures of roses, and anytime that the sun's out, I'll literally pull over on the side of the road and just start snapping pictures. And
It's good
it's
stuff.
the little things in life that mean so much today.
And I think a lot of the time too, it's because when we're in we're being our own worst enemies with that stuff, is we
Hmm.
don't stop and we don't see all this stuff around us. So to be able to be where you're at now and to share with the rest of the world, even if it is, oh hey, look, there's a little ladybug there, I'm gonna
Hmm.
take a picture.
Hmm.
That's still very positive.
It is.
And to have somebody else open up their eyes to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with you talking about doing like the volunteer work and stuff, there's a thing called 365 Give,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about how giving and being positive and doing this stuff is also gives you that good feeling.
It's an amazing feeling to
That's
help.
incredible.
Yes, to give back and to help someone else. It's unreal.
Yeah, you got something else?
Yeah, Abby Taylor chimes in and says, "So proud of you, Travis. I miss you. Keep fighting the great fight."
Mm. Thank you, Abby. I appreciate that. That's a friend from when I was 15. I was ultimately my girlfriend when I was 15 years old, and I had a long mohawk and green hair.
And she's still sticking
That's
around.
great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Support. That is
And
so
she's
cool.
she's in recovery now. I want her to know that I'm very proud of her. That's part of the reason that I keep all my, like, when I came into recovery, people told me you should delete all your friends off your Facebook and do all that. No, I keep all my friends on my Facebook because they know how I was when I lived down there,
Mhm.
and they know that how bad I was in my addiction. And I want them to know that they see it through me, through
Yeah.
what I'm doing, that hope and recovery is possible. And she's doing her thing, and her
Awesome.
sister's doing her thing, and I'm really proud of them.
That is so cool. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Mm.
We are very proud of you here at Survivor Girl too. Just keep on going. And like he said, I mean, this is incredible. And I love being able to have this testimony with you and hear your story because you've been through so much.
Yeah,
to
there's a
turn it.
lot more there too,
Yeah.
obviously, but you
Yeah.
know, it's a blessing to be a part of these things. I appreciate you
Oh.
for doing what you do. This is a part of service work right here. What you do is giving back to these people and showing all these people on a broader spectrum than I've even ever been a part of, that hope, and it is possible to thrive and survive and become a better person and just go forward in life.
That's cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Choked me up there. It's crazy because originally when the thought of Survivor Girl came out, it was a completely different avenue. And then once we were talking, and Tony's like, "Why don't?" Well, first I thought about doing like a blog.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can share my stories of what I've been through and where I'm at now with what I'm doing. And we got into the conversation of doing a podcast because at that point, how far were we in with the other podcasts?
We're probably about 50 or 60 episodes in.
So I was getting pretty comfortable behind the mic, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't we just have another podcast? I want to go and try this. And I was on Facebook doing a live one day, and I was just like, I want to do a podcast. Let's do this. And Survivor Girl, I'm happy to have you here, and I've had other men on the show. Tony was actually on one of the shows as well.
Awesome.
And it's not just for women. Survivor Girl was based because my email actually came out as Survivor Girl Thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just it started just going, and it's for everybody. Survivor Girl is for everybody.
Absolutely.
Surviving.
You and
Yeah.
To add a caveat, Heather is also an insane person that if she gets a thought in her head,
Yep.
you're not deterring her. She's doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't say no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is another thing too. Next week, my guest that's coming on, me and him are both insane people,
Yeah.
and we're gonna talk. If you guys want to tune in again,
Mhm.
we're gonna talk about how it is to have all these different projects and how to hone it in, and continue to do the work. Because I feel really, and with listening to your story and your journey, more or less, is I feel like I've got my calling. And
Yeah.
it sounds like so do you.
That's that's absolutely. I found my calling. I tried overdosing numerous times to try and actually take myself out, and it never worked. There was always something that intervened. It was my higher power that intervened in my life and said, I have a bigger deal for you, a bigger
Mhm.
project. And if you're patient and don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle, I'm going to show you that life can be freaking amazing. And it is. There's just, words can't even express my life today and how great things are.
Travis, I want to have you come back in like maybe 6 months or so, and I want
Absolutely.
to talk with you again. I want to see and give more hope on Survivor Girl podcast with you,
Absolutely.
because I want to keep on touching base with you. Obviously, we're friends on Facebook, so that's not changing. But I'd like to have you come back for our listeners that are watching and touch base with you again, because
Absolutely.
I know and I feel it in my heart with talking with you that sky's the limit and you
It
are
is.
going.
I am.
And
I
that's
do. I have
awesome.
a drive right now, and that's exactly. I always say that the sky is the limit. We are. I'm going up, and as long as you, for me anyway, as long as I don't pick up drugs and I just, I keep setting goals and keep, smashing them and just moving them out the way. And I always say, if I fail to plan, I plan to fail, and
That's a good one.
so I make a lot of plans, and I make goals. And my next major goal right now in life is to own my own home in the next year, and I'm speaking that into existence. And
Yes,
everywhere
I
that
love
I
it.
go, that's what I talk about is, I'm speaking it into existence, and I will own my own home in the next year, I hope.
You will. Hey, when you speak it out, and that's a huge thing too.
Mm-hmm.
The mind is an incredible thing because,
Mhm.
like you said, when you have the positive thought, when you think about what it is that you want, what you're going for, you can make some crazy things happen in the good way. I hope. That's
Absolutely.
in the
And
good
like
way.
you were talking about being crazy, I'm absolutely freaking insane.
See,
I still am.
see,
Still
Travis.
absolutely insane.
I think you should join me for
Birds of a feather.
Right. I think he needs to join me for Thrive to Survive Fest. Maybe we can plan some stuff.
Yeah.
I need some.
Yeah.
I need some planners. Some
Absolutely.
people that are passionate. and,
Absolutely.
you know,
I am definitely passionate and driven.
awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I wanted to do this episode for sure to
Mhm.
put out there to everybody that there is hope. You can recover.
Yes.
You can have a brand new life in front of you, and you're living it, and that's
Mhm.
awesome.
I am.
So I want to thank you so much for being here and joining me. And like I said, 6 months.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well,
And
we're
I
putting
thank
it in
you.
the-
I thank you for letting me be a part of something so much bigger than myself.
It's bigger than me too, my friend.
Yes, it's a blessing.
It is. It is. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward. Abby, you and your sister, you keep on going too. Everybody
Absolutely.
out
I'm
there,
so proud of you guys.
if this is
Anybody.
touching you, if you feel like you need to share this episode, please put it out there. The more people that can see it and hear his testimony and story, the more it's going to help.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
So,
And
guys-
then if anybody ever needs any contact, you could always contact me. If you ever feel like you need to talk about anything, I'm an open ear and I listen and can help with you as best that I can.
Same here. Survivor Girl is always open, you guys. We don't have a shut off. And if I'm awake or if one of us is awake, we'll be there for you. I don't always have the answer, but we can help the best way we can to help each other and move you to where you need to go. If we don't have the answer, we'll find it for you. And guys, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. And remember, guys, life is best lived.